Love. It's a word that carries promises of warmth, connection, and trust. In a world shaped by glowing screens and swiping fingers, love is no longer found under starlit skies or in the fleeting glance of strangers passing by. It's a choice made with a single flick of the thumb. A match, a message, a meeting. Her name was Sarah. She was 29, intelligent, ambitious, and like many, searching for something raw. The endless parade of profiles felt mechanical, yet one stood out. His name was James. His words were thoughtful, his smile disarming. To Sarah, he wasn't just another face. He was intriguing, a spark in the monotony. But behind every profile is a story. Some are stories of hope, others of heartbreak. And then there are those whose stories defy explanation. Sarah didn't know it yet, but the choice to swipe right that day would take her on a path far from the love she imagined. Her story begins with a smile, but it doesn't end that way. She thought she was meeting the man of her dreams, but sometimes dreams have a way of turning into nightmares. What would you risk for love? Sarah Miller was like so many others. At 29, she had built a life she could be proud of, an accomplished tech worker, a close-knit group of friends, and a sense of independence she valued deeply. But there was one thing missing, someone to share it with. After a few failed relationships and endless stories of modern dating, she reluctantly turned to Tinder. Swiping had become a routine, a blend of hope and disappointment that blurred together. But on a quiet Tuesday evening, that routine was interrupted. His name was James. His profile wasn't flashy, but it was thoughtful. A quiet elegance in his words and photos that set him apart. His messages were unlike the usual banter she had grown accustomed to. He seemed genuine, attentive, witty, and just the right amount of mysterious. When I first matched with James, I felt relieved. Finally, someone who didn't open with a cheesy pickup line or ask for my Instagram. He actually seemed interested in who I was, she said. For weeks, their conversations flowed effortlessly. He remembered the smallest details she mentioned, always knowing just what to say. It felt natural. It felt right. But even in the brightest moments, shadows can linger unnoticed. Sarah couldn't quite put her finger on it at first. Little things that didn't seem to add up. A casual comment from James that contradicted something he had said before. A hesitation in his answers when she asked about his life. And then there was his tendency to vanish. Sarah proclaimed that there were times when he'd disappear for days. No explanation, no warning. And when he came back, it was like nothing had happened. He always had an excuse: work, travel, a bad connection. But something about it felt off. She tried to brush it off. After all, everyone has secrets, right? But the deeper their connection grew, the more questions began to surface. Questions she wasn't sure she wanted answers to. Sarah began to notice other things too. Strange noises late at night, a subtle change in the air when she mentioned James to friends. Was she overthinking, or was there something she couldn't yet see? In love, doubt often whispers louder than reassurance, and Sarah was about to learn that some whispers should never be ignored. We had been talking for weeks, and he suggested we finally meet. He picked the place, a small cafe I'd never heard of before. It felt intimate, almost too perfect, but I didn't question it. I wanted it to go well, she said. The cafe was quiet, almost eerily so. No barista called out orders, no sound of machines steaming milk, just the occasional clink of a cup and the soft murmur of conversation. It felt like a space outside of time. Sarah proclaimed that she remembers freezing. I looked up at him, and he just smiled, like he already knew what I'd seen. He knew things about her that she had never shared, small details about her childhood, her favorite songs, even the brand of perfume she wore. As they stand to leave, James leans in close and whispers, "I've been waiting for you." Their romance unfolded like a dream, but it was a dream that felt heavy, as though something unseen weighed it down. James would vanish for days, his explanations vague. And then there were the noises. She further explained that sometimes when we were on the phone, I'd hear things. A faint hum, like someone else was on the line. Once, I even heard breathing. He'd laugh it off, but it left me with a pit in my stomach. The warnings started as cryptic texts, but soon they became impossible to ignore. Someone wanted Sarah to know that James wasn't who he claimed to be. Desperate for answers, Sarah began digging, but the deeper she went, the less she found. His social media was sparse, almost too perfect. His stories didn't line up. And then she found it. Sarah was surprised, saying, "The man in the footage, it was him. The same smile, the same eyes. But how could it be? The date on the footage didn't make sense." She tried to rationalize it, an uncanny resemblance, maybe a coincidence. But deep down, she knew. This wasn't normal, and it wasn't safe. Desperation often drives us to places we'd never willingly go. For Sarah, that place was an old, decrepit building on the outskirts of town. James insisted they meet there, claiming it was the only way to explain everything. Against her better judgment, she agreed. I knew it was a bad idea. Every instinct told me to turn back, but I had to know. I had to understand what was happening, she said to herself. The air inside was suffocating, heavy with a presence she couldn't see but could feel. And then she saw him. Sarah, with voice trembling, asked, "Who are you? What is this place?" James calmly replied, "I told you, Sarah. I've been waiting for you. You were always meant to be here." Sarah's worst fears were confirmed. James wasn't just a man. He was something far older, far darker. An entity that thrived on loneliness, feeding on the hope of those seeking connection. It wasn't him anymore. It was something else. Something I can't explain even now, she said. Every step felt like a lifetime. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with dread. And then came the transformation. Sarah said, "I thought I could hide." But it wasn't just chasing me, it was everywhere. Exhaustion weighed on her, but fear propelled her forward. The entity was relentless, but somehow she found herself outside, gasping, trembling, and alive. I don't even remember how I got out. It felt like it let me go. Or maybe it just wanted me to think I was safe, she said, but survival came at a cost. Sarah escaped the building, but she couldn't escape what she had seen or what she had felt. The scars it left behind weren't just on her skin. They were deeper, etched into her soul. Back in the safety of her home, Sarah tried to piece together what had happened, but the more she searched, the clearer it became. This wasn't over, she said. It knew where I lived. It knew everything about me. I realized then that I hadn't escaped. It had let me go, and it was watching. Sometimes, the most terrifying monsters aren't the ones hiding in the shadows. They're the ones we invite into our lives, unknowingly opening doors that can never be closed. If you're watching this, I want you to remember, trust can be dangerous. Loneliness makes us vulnerable, and there are things out there waiting that will take advantage of that. Be careful who you let in, Sarah proclaimed, because sometimes love is the scariest thing of all. What would you have done in Sarah's place? Could you have seen the signs? Or would you have fallen for the illusion like so many others? If this story keeps you on the edge of your seat, make sure to like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more chilling tales. And don't forget to click the bell icon to never miss an upload.